This is an explanation of my AIDS hive exposure test. Over here are some of the references I've listed for you. One is University of Washington HSV hive study 2006 completion date. Estimated 80 to 90% of hive patients had HSV2 groin sores. Avert.org for the infection rates I'm using over here. Who HSV studies in 2003 and 2012. Men had 55% in 2003. Women had 70% HSV rates. And both combined were 66.7%. This is in Africa. In 2012, there was no availability information on men and women separately, but the combined total was 31%, which was more than a 50% reduction in numbers that had the disease in Africa. Now, hive AIDS exposure test. Swaziland is an example here. Swaziland, 27% hive rate in 2014, 31% HSV2 rate in 2012, major drop since 2010. There's been a major drop in casualties as well. Africa, 2003 for HSV was 66.7% again. 2012 was 31%. Delta change was 35.7 percentage points. In the United States, black male rate was 0.6% in 2016. Black male rate, HSV rate was 50%. Black male infection rate was 1 and 2, which is also 50%. New infection rate, I notice I put that new in there big time. It's a new infection rate. Okay, Swaziland, 27% by 9% that came from the 2006 study by University of Washington. Okay, now that means 24% of their AIDS patients probably had HSV2 or groin sores of some kind. USA black males, 0.6% in the United States have AIDS. 9% of those would be 0.53% have both AIDS and HSV2. U.S. black male potential spread rate is 45% times 90% equals 40% with both. And that's most of the information, but that's not everything I need to tell you. If you look at this information, what I did is I took all that information, I put it together, and I came up with a simple rule. Hive groin sores are high risk of AIDS exposure. Now, think about that. Right there it is. Groin sores are high risk of AIDS exposure. And you can see this 90% that comes from up here. If you think 90% of infected people with hive also have groin sores, isn't a usable diagnostic test, then you must not understand how much 90% is. That's 9 out of every 10 people that have hive have groin sores. Now that's right there. 9 out of every 10 people that have their hive patients had HSV groin sores. That's a lot of people. Then, of course, the big rule of all. I'll write this down. PEP treatment. If partner has groin sores, go to ER within 48 hours. Now you wonder why you would do that. Because that 48-hour period that I just wrote down there, it actually goes up to 72, but it's not as effective after 48 hours as it is up to 48 hours. After 48 hours, it's almost 100% effective. Once it's effective doing, if you get exposed to the AIDS virus by having sex with somebody with groin sores, or sharing of needles, or hemorrhoids, if you can get to a doctor and get this treatment started, this PEP treatment started here, within 48 hours, you can cure yourself. But it has to be within 48 hours to have a near 100% probability of getting cured of it. But it doesn't count if you've already got it. Once you have it more than 72 hours, there's nothing we can do for you with current medications. But between the time of infection or the time of exposure and the time where we can actually give you a treatment that, like with cancer, the earlier we catch it, the better the prognostics. So basically, your better chances. So if you get to the doctor and you get this PEP treatment started within this 48 hours, you can be cured of AIDS. It will not set into your system and give you AIDS, even if you are exposed to it. Now, if you wait for 72 hours, it is only 66% effective, if I remember the number right. I don't even remember why I got that on the internet. But anyway, you don't have to, I think I got it on TV or something, but still, that figure is an interesting figure. You'll find the PEP treatment rules on cdc.gov. Info. Now, all you have to do is cdc.info, which is U.S. government agency, is call them and they'll go through and tell you what they've got on their site. If you don't feel like going through what's on their site yourself, they are experts and they can go through the site a lot quicker and get the information faster than you can yourself. But that's that. That's the big thing right there, the PEP treatment. The difference between any other test and my exposure test, which is this groin sores here, are a high risk of AIDS exposure. That means you have a chance, if you can get to the doctor fast enough and get that treatment started fast enough, to avoid catching AIDS if you're exposed to it. Think about that, folks. A little system just looking for groin sores or sharing needles or hemorrhoids. Either of those three can transmit the AIDS virus. But if you know if you can pin it down to within a day or two of when you were infected, and you haven't passed the 48 to 72 hour rule, then you can take medicine that will keep you from catching AIDS. It's just like cancer. If they catch it fast enough, they can cure it. AIDS is the same way now. My hive exposure test. All this information and sites here that I put together all point to one thing. This PEP treatment can be used to cure the AIDS virus if you get it early enough. Otherwise, it doesn't do worth a hoot for you. Well, that's what I wanted to say. Thomas Will's out here.